Hello, welcome to Movie Story. Today we're going to watch the 2013 movie Gravity. Watch out, spoilers ahead, take care, and let's start. The film starts with some white on black text telling us that in space, life is impossible as there is no sound and no air due to the extreme temperatures. We are then shown Earth as is seen from outer space. Radio chatter goes on in the background between astronauts on Space Shuttle STS-157 and Houston Mission Control. Matt Kowalski, an astronaut near retirement, tells some stories and jokes back and forth with Mission Control. Sharif, another foreign astronaut, fixes some battery modules outside their spacecraft. Dr. Ryan Stone, the third member of the crew, is having some health problems. Her heart rate is abnormal and Mission Control is unable to receive any data about her health. She's checking for broken components but can't find anything. Matt Kowalski, while going on his last spacewalk, helps out Dr. Ryan Stone with her work. The astronauts are then notified that a Russian satellite has struck another decommissioned satellite, sending high-speed debris through space. The three astronauts speak about their training and lives. While Kowalski tells another story, Mission Control hastily contacts them and tells them to abort the mission and get back immediately into their spaceship because the debris from the crash is causing a chain reaction headed their way. They keep getting ready to get back into the ship when they get reports about the chain reaction worsening. The situation is growing out of control. The astronauts can now see debris coming their way and going over the ship. The astronauts lose contact with Mission Control. Sharif is hit and immediately killed by the debris. The whole station gets destroyed by the debris, and Dr. Stone, after detaching herself from her now destroyed anchor, is sent flying into space. Dr. Stone is contacted by Kowalski and panics. She can't breathe and is having a hard time understanding where she is. She falls into a state of shock, but manages to calm down and tries to tell Kowalski and Mission Control what she's able to see, but messages don't get through. Finally, she can hear Kowalski again and she reports her status. Kowalski reassures her and tethers her to him. He continues to tell Dr. Stone to breathe slowly and to stop wasting oxygen. They're trying to contact Mission Control but can't hear any response. The two of them move to retrieve Sharif's dead body. Ryan grabs him and notices a giant hole that the debris tore through his whole skull. She also sees Sharif's family photo floating next to him. Kowalski reports to Mission Control the extensive damage that their spaceship Explorer sustained, and the two astronauts make their way inside the damaged vessel. Inside, a lot of stuff is flying around. Ryan gets suddenly spooked by the floating corpse. She and Kowalski are the only two survivors of the whole mission. Ryan apologizes for not following orders quickly enough, but Kowalski tells her that she could not have done anything to prevent this from happening. They agree on making their way to the International Space Station and using one of their escape pods to make it back to Earth. While floating over to their destination, Kowalski asks Ryan where she thinks home is and what she would be doing if she was still on Earth, just finishing up her hospital shift. He asks her if somebody back on Earth would be thinking about her right now. She said that she once had a daughter, but one day while playing tag, she slipped, hit her head, and tragically died just like that. Ryan is almost completely out of oxygen. Kowalski tells her that they're only 5 minutes away from the International Space Station and explains to her how to make the best out of the oxygen she still has in her tank and spacesuit. He jokingly tells her that at least he knows where the Russians hide their vodka inside the Soyuz pods. Kowalski is running low on thrust as well, so he has to calculate his every move to make it to the ISS. He thrusts one last time, and they crash onto the station. Ryan is then detached from Kowalski and starts drifting away, but fortunately gets caught in a wire and pulled back towards him. He too starts floating away, but Ryan manages to hold him. Kowalski wants Ryan to let go, since he's only a dead weight at that point as he cannot be saved. She doesn't want to, but in the end, Kowalski disconnects himself from her and floats away into the black void. Ryan is now left alone to fend for herself on the ISS. Ryan struggles to grab anything to keep her anchored to the ISS, but in the end, manages to grab a piece of railing and makes it. Matt Kowalski keeps talking to her and explains that she's getting lightheaded because she's breathing in CO2. She has to get in and make her way to the Chinese space station since it's the only station around with a functional escape pod, the Shenzhou. She tells Kowalski that she'll come back for him with a Soyuz, but he tells her that he's too far away. That ship has sailed and she has to focus on making it back to Earth. Kowalski continues to drift away while calmly talking to her. She's about to pass out, but after a good deal of struggling, opens the airlock and makes it in. While she waits for the air pressure to get to 100%, she's about to pass out, but in the end she's able to make it. She removes her spacesuit and settles down, finally able to close her eyes and rest for a moment. She roams the abandoned ISS and tries to contact Matt, but he's unresponsive. She reports to Mission Command that she has lost all contact with Mission Commander Lieutenant Matt Kowalski, and that she confirms to be the only survivor of STS-157. An alarm suddenly goes off, and she leaves to check what it is. She sees that it's a fire and tries to put it out, but hits her head and passes out. She manages to almost immediately gain back consciousness and gets away. Ryan manages to confine herself to a Soyuz escape pod and hears a violent explosion. She goes through some manuals and starts the Soyuz. She's able to detach herself from the ISS with just 7 minutes to spare before another debris wave hits her. While the escape pod is floating away, its parachute gets caught in the station. She struggles to keep control of the Soyuz and almost crashes into the ISS, but manages to stabilize the craft. She's still stuck though, so she exits the escape pod and tries to free it. She tries to detach the parachute, but while she's doing so, some debris is seen flying around her. She notices the hail coming her way and hurries up. The ISS gets hit and explodes, but she makes it and gets back inside. She resets the timer for the next debris storm and sets off for the Chinese station. She aligns it correctly, but something goes wrong. The pod is out of fuel. She tries to contact Houston, and she hears somebody respond. At first, she thinks she's talking with a Chinese space station, but when she hears dogs in the background, she realizes she's talking to somebody on Earth. She starts howling together with the dogs back on Earth. She says to the man that she's going to die today. The pod is getting colder and colder. The man back on Earth starts singing while she asks him to pray for her. She hears a baby cry through the radio. She gets emotional and asks the man over the radio to sing a lullaby. She starts releasing oxygen in an attempt to kill herself. Just as she's about to give up, another astronaut bangs on her pod and opens the hatch. It's Matt Kowalski. Ryan asks him how he made it. He tells her that it was due to some extra battery power, and then casually gets out a plastic vodka bottle. Kowalski then asks her if she really wants to make it back to Earth, and tells her that it's time to go back. She then realizes it was all just a hallucination. Ryan turns the oxygen valve back on and restores O2 levels back to normal. Thanks to her hallucination, she realizes how to make it to the Chinese station using the landing jets. She goes through the manual again, and she detaches all the modules from her capsule. While she's working towards the station, she imagines talking to Kowalski and telling him to find her daughter and tell her that she found a little red shoe the kid was so worried about under the bed. She asks him to hug her and tell her that she's a very good little girl, and to tell her that she loves her and that she will not give up. She gets ready to board the Chinese station. She grabs an extinguisher and launches herself out. She uses the extinguisher to thrust her way onto the station. Ryan just barely grabs onto the station and pushes herself onto the spaceship just as it's approaching the atmosphere. As she's in, debris starts hitting the station. She makes her way through the empty station towards the Shenzhou pod. She enters it and locks herself inside. The Chinese station is falling towards the Earth at an incredible speed. All the buttons are in Chinese, and she initially struggles to turn on the escape pod. She presses some buttons randomly and finally sets off the correct procedure. She reports to Houston just like Matt would have done. She holds the escape pod and puts on her helmet just as the rest of the station disintegrates. The Shenzhou pod is red hot and falling towards Earth. She manages to detach the rest of the modules from her capsule and braces for impact. A fire starts inside the pod. The parachute opens and she hears radio chatter as the Shenzhou pod slows down. Finally, she lands on water and opens the hatch as the pod fills with smoke. The pod sinks and she has to hastily remove her suit to avoid drowning. She finally removes it completely and can get to the surface and breathe. In the sky, a lot of Chinese station pieces are falling towards the Earth as they burn. She swims to shore and makes it to the muddy sands. She struggles to get back on her feet, but finally realizes that she made it there alive. The film ends as she slowly walks away to find help.